Well, protests around America have shown the inequality that Black Americans have faced for far too long. People of color have gathered together to the strength, I should say, to speak and the resilience to talk about the challenges as a direct result of institutional racism, whether it's housing discrimination, economic injustice, police brutality, employment, unemployment, barrier disparities in education, healthcare, and the list continues. Communities gather together to voice their concerns about the mistreatment that they actually face. The relationship between the police department and the community continues to be somewhat strained, and things are in the process of being worked out. And when we say in the process of being worked out, yeah, it's a long road ahead. There's some challenges that are facing today's society. And so here to put some things in better context for us is pastor and also social justice advocate, Ed Mulraine, who joins us now. And good to have you, Pastor Ed Mulraine.
It's good to have you. It's good to you continue to do what you're doing. Pastor, bless your heart.
Thanks, man. We're trying to just raise the voice and raise some voices about awareness and social justice and social equity. But let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, you've been out there, front lines in the protests, front lines in raising your voice in the aftermath of George Floyd's death. First of all, your thoughts.
Well, first of all, let's say we began this a long time ago. When I was president of the NAACP, Williamsbridge section, we started with Amadou Diallo and Eleanor Bumpers and Sean Bell. So this is not new to us. I think that I like what's going on in terms of the increasing protests from different groups, from different cultures, from different voices, from young, from the older. And I think that this one with George Floyd really shows that the years of suppression and years of oppression and years of police officers that use misconduct and violence and murder against Black lives really this is a tipping point right now. So I think that it's a good thing that's what's going on right now. And I think that it's even better that it's continuing and that in the midst of this changes are being made state to state, city to city, and locality to locality. And I think we just have to keep it up.
Yeah, we talk about social justice. Obviously, it's on the mind of a lot of people now, that word social justice. But as you said, you've been on the battlefield for a long time, but it now seems to be getting new life. Talk to us about the new life that social justice is receiving today.
I think that the new life is absolutely wonderful. And the reason why it's so wonderful is because it says that it's not only affecting Black lives, but it's affecting America. When that officer took an oath to the United States Constitution to uphold life, liberty, and equal protection under the law, he said something about what he would do. And when he broke that, when those officers broke that, then they not only are they responsible for the murder of George Floyd, but America is responsible for the murder of George Floyd. And I think that why so many people are involved now, because they see this as an America problem. America problem that has not done anything about it, America problem that has allowed it to go unchallenged, not put the necessary reform and policies in place. And then the energy is there, new culture, new context, creates new influences and new voices. So the voices that are out there right now are saying that this is a long-standing problem. It's affecting us. Those who are not Black are saying that this is affecting our friends. This is affecting our relationships. There are more relationships between the cultures and the races now. I think that more people are seeing how this can tear down America. The racial problem has been a problem for a long time, but I think this new context, new culture is showing how if we don't do something about this, that this rising tide of voices will continue to go forward and continue to be just as aggressive as the violence that's occurring against Black lives. So I think that this is a great thing that's going on, and we must continue. And it's a new form of leadership. It's not just one person leading the charge. I mean, we had the Martin Luther King, we had the Frederick Douglasses, we had the Malcolm X, but I think this is a confluence of so many different voices coming together in different places. I mean, when you have places where there are no Black people in Utah and Nevada and places like that, and little towns and cities that are rising up as a result of George Floyd, this is a whole new culture, a whole new time. And I think Al Sharpton said it best when he said that, you know, at one time, a white woman came to him and says that she hated him. And then now a little girl came to him and she said, Black Lives Matter, little white girl. I think that this shows something about the times that we are in, and that everybody is looking at it, not from a liberal or conservative point, but as a human point. This is about humanity. This is about how you deprive lives and how you deprive dignity and how you deprive equal protection under the law. So we must continue this fight, and we must continue it with the voices, the various cultures and the various races in order to tear down and not only reform, but deconstruct and then reconstruct something new.
Yeah, we talk about having boots on the ground, right? And I think for you, you've been a person with boots on the ground. You're the former head of the NAACP. And when we talk about organizations like the NAACP, organizations like the National Action Network, much can be said about we're not where we are today without the work of these organizations, the SCLC, to really get to a place of creating this awareness. Because yes, George Floyd was the tipping point, but long before that, organizations such as the NAACP and SCLC have long been raising their voices.
That's right. I think it's an evolution of context, evolution of culture, and it's absolutely necessary that that evolution take place. And we must give credit to the changes that have occurred under organizational leadership. NAACP, absolutely, since 1909, and NAN since way back, and has been on the forefront of confronting many of these police misconduct issues before there were cameras, when we could not see it on cameras. I think the new culture has come along, and cameras have taken the place in terms of civil rights, in terms of showing the actual misconduct, the actual murder, and the actual beating. But prior to that, when there were no cameras, I mean, I'm thinking about Emmett Till right now, and they caught the picture of him. And just imagine if we had video cameras back then, where they not only caught a picture of him, but they also caught the beating and the drowning and the white men on camera doing what they did. I think that this is a time where we have to thank God for the past in terms of the organizations and their still existence, and then also embrace what's going on right now with the new collective voices that are out there in order to continue the role of social justice, the fight for freedom, the fight for exercising of freedom in this society, and the fight for humanity, the fight for Black lives. These two organizational and individual come together in order to tear down a destructive and wicked system.
And when we talk about destructing the system, that's because of protests. A lot of protests have actually caused deconstruction of the system. I know for yourself that you got some things planned as well. Talk about what you got going on.
Well, we already had a nice march right here and demonstration right here in Mount Vernon, New York. And back in the days, I did it in the Bronx, but now we're doing it in Mount Vernon. And we held our voices up and let the community know, that the clergy, and joined with clergy in order to let the community know that we needed to join in solidarity with those who were condemning the violence and the murder of George Floyd. And so much clergy came out, the community came out, and we were able to voice our disapproval of the system, as well as shout out some changes that need to be made. You know, it's one thing to demonstrate, it's another thing to demand. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. And so we demanded some things, which included basically everything that Obama had written down in his 8 points, that the chokehold must be eliminated and outlawed, that cops should intervene with other cops, that we should do our best to eliminate 50A, which is going on right now. So there are some marches coming up on the 21st United Baptist Coalition in White Plains, New York, as well as one nationally that I'll be involved in with Pastor Johnny Green and Mount Neva, the Ark of Justice. And I think that will take place on Juneteenth in Washington, D.C. And it's absolutely necessary that everybody be there in order to take part in it, because we're going to go straight to where the policy, the source, and many times the opposition is, and that's in Washington, D.C. Martin Luther King's statue is there, and at the other end, President Trump is in the White House, two opposing factors, and we're on the side of justice. And so that's a big one that I think everybody should make note of and be involved in.
Yeah, I've been asking all the guests on today's show to talk a little bit about the reform that's taking place by Governor Cuomo that's put out there. You mentioned 50A. We know where 50A is right now. But in addition, the race baiting calls, the things that are going on with regards to reform. Your thoughts on the governor's plan of reform? I know that things have passed, but and it's waiting the governor's signature. But let me get your take.
Yeah, I want to give the governor credit because he, at the end of the day, signs everything and approves it into law. But let's give also credit to Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who's the head of the state Senate, as well as Carl Heastie, who's the head of the Assembly. I think they're putting together these bills along with their faction and consortium of members in order to make sure that these bills are written correctly and that they go forward to the governor. And I think the governor has been, I think he's been exceptional when it comes to COVID. I think he's been exceptional when it comes to these issues of race relations. And then he's been exceptional when it comes to signing the bills that need to be signed in order for us to transform the system that is existing at the time. And that's what we want. We want a total deconstruction. I think that more needs to be done. We need to keep it up. We do need, the 50A has been passed. I think some of the Obama statements need to be not only locally or statewide, but also national. When we talk about, they did the chokeholds, but when we talk about cops being responsible or being intentional and intervening with other cops, I thank God that what happened with the George Floyd situation, and although Chauvin was on the neck of George Floyd, there was also a cop who was on his back and another one on his leg and another one who was standing there preventing the crowd from getting anywhere close to what was going on. Cops need to intervene. Cops need, we may need a law on that, because if they don't, then they'll get into trouble. And that aiding and abetting, which the other cops were charged with, is a serious charge that must be stated and also implemented as a policy, that if you do not get involved, you will face criminal charges of aiding and abetting. So I think that is everything so far is going well. We still have a long ways to go. I do not think this will be the last, George Floyd will be the last death, but I do think that this is having the most impact. And they said in 60 years of any protest that has gone on for a long time. And the changes that are being made under it also makes one happy and joyful that things can happen when people come together, but much more still needs to be done.
Yeah. And final thoughts before we wrap up. Give me your thoughts about, what do you see happening in the near future?
Well, what I see, this is what I said. I see prophetically, I would say that something else is going to happen that's going to trigger something that we missed out on that will give us an opportunity. I think that each event or each drastic or dramatic violent action that takes place, it's an opportunity for people to rise up, challenge it, and make the necessary transformative actions to the structure that exists. So I think that stuff will happen again in the future. But I do think that we'll see more restraint from police officers. I do think that we do have a lot of good officers, and we'll see more of them rising up to be more interactive with the community. I do see them being, police officers being a little bit more considerate of those who they come into contact with, whether it be in a car or whether it be in the streets, as a result of what's going on right now. We see a lot where those racist police officers are rising up and doing certain things. And one thing I do want to say, I'm not too big on residency, because I do think that I have a brother who's a police officer and others who are police officers. But I do think that if we do more, at least 50 to 70% of police officers living in our community, that would be great. It would help out. It would sound the bell for a new structure and engagement, and it would make us feel more like we're family rather than enemies. And so we should do more along those lines. But I do see things happening that are positive. I'm not one to uphold the negative, but we do point out the negative. But I do see a lot more happening that will transform the structure that exists currently.
Yeah. Things are happening for the better. Ed Mulraine, thank you so much for coming and being
Thank
with
you.
us
And
here.
anybody needs just edwardmulraine.com. They can sign up, put their email in, and get all the updated information of what we're doing.
Make sure that people get connected. Ed Mulraine, of course, they have the information at the bottom of the screen. Thanks so much for joining us and being here with us.
Thank you. And keep up the good work, Dan.
Hey, bro, we're trying to.
I know you do it.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, take care.